2024, and then they're going to help assist with us transitioning out in 2025, with me being part of the process, so I can kind of get a hands on what's going on there.
Okay, so is the only issue for delaying that, just to give you more time to get up to speed? I mean, I'm trying to remember what the impetus for moving it from a separate utility into the general fund.
Yes, just so that I'm involved instead of them just moving it and I'm not sure how or why, and then in the future we may have to do something else, just so that I'm in tune with everything from the get-go.
Okay, and again, the benefits of moving it to the general fund, or the reason we're doing it, is it because based upon changes we made to parking rules, or?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, and so we'll plan on parking continuing to be a utility in the 2024 budget.
Yep, and then we'll
Okay.
transition it over to the general fund in 2025.
Okay.
All right, and then we are for the credit card conversation. I tried to answer a few of your questions as a part of the list of questions that you gave us before the meeting.
Thank you. I haven't had time to go through that all yet.
Yeah, and I want to say I appreciate you for sending the questions ahead of time, giving me a chance to think about those. So overall, for the credit card conversation, I know you wanted a little bit more detail on the potential of being able to shift that 3% back to the residents. After doing our due diligence and giving calls to our 4 different processors we have, per utility, per service, per parking, it's a really, really webby process. One, Invoice Cloud kind of just gave me a direct, they can't, as far as what they do on their billing end, can't push it out. It's just not something that how they structure their billing, they can't push it out. We have another payment processor and payment tech who their billing is integrated with Invoice Cloud as well. So if Invoice Cloud can't move theirs, payment tech pretty much can't move theirs out. And then we have Ames and the parking utility payments. I think one of those already are pushing theirs to the residents.
Oh, okay.
And I think the last one left was, I think Ames, and the majority of their billing is not directly the just a credit card transaction, is a part of just their service overall. So they have sort of like a fixed budgeted cost based on like just cost of operating. So if we were to push out or to attempt to try to push out the 3% or whatever that percentage may be, the process would have to pass a few barriers. One being, if the system we use for our website would let us add that percentage as an individual processor, which they kind of gave us a hint that it's either an all or nothing type of deal. They can't break it out to one processor versus another. We would have to push all of them out. But like I said earlier, Invoice Cloud was telling me that pretty much they can't. I'm not too techie, so I didn't kind of tell them to break down how to build a website and why they can't. But I'm pretty sure they can give us a somewhat better of an explanation around that area.
Okay, well, I appreciate the effort, and I will get through the memo probably tomorrow. But for this, I don't want to, because this is more of a budget 2025 question to me at this point. I just want a starting point. You know, I rely on your recommendation for 2024. If you say we shouldn't do it, then I can support that, and we'll see how the rest of the board feels about it. But I just don't want to take away from the QT financial report if there's anything else that we should know. I did notice there were a few things that were in red, and because I'm not really a spreadsheets person, I couldn't figure out why some of the columns were in red and there were not very many. If that was a flag for something that I should look for, or if that was something that you were doing for yourself, just let me know.
Part one of myself, part two, if that number kind of stood out to you, I left a side note for myself to be able to pinpoint it. But it's more so most of those red tagged items are items that they don't bill quarterly. Some of them are like front loaded in the beginning of the year or loaded up in the back of the year. So if it was a number that like stood out to me, like, oh, it looks like we may be overpacing or underpacing, I kind of just like marked it because that's one that probably bills
Okay,
heavy
and that
towards the
would
beginning
make
of the year.
me, then that would make me slide over to the notes section to see perhaps why it's red, right? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. And so anything of note, what did I see? I just was looking. Well, again, I saw bank fees on page, sorry, let me move my cursor. On page 17, bank fees were up to 143%. It's only the end of June. I mean, I'm looking for outliers, right? I know you have professional fees on that page 17 in red, but no notation, so I don't know why that's red. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I see what you're
But
saying.
then what stood out to me was 3 lines below, bank fees were already at 143% at the end of June. And so I guess that was to maybe think, number one, what does a red number mean? And should I pay attention?
There's no direct definition, but there are just marks to note, but no real concerns. If it was a real concern, you'll see like a detailed note in there.
Okay.
But if it's red with no note, it's probably just something to keep an eye on for me, myself, and something that may just stick out to you, but nothing to worry about if there's no note.
Okay, and I have to say retiree health insurance looks like a really good deal here because I see us going to 0 participant eligibility ending. So is that a program where it phased out? Were we previously paying retiree health premiums and do we no longer need to do that as part of a maybe contractual?
That's one
I
I had
guess looking at page 18, the item number is 51,340, retiree health insurance, participant eligibility. And, you know, healthcare is such an expensive item for any employer. And then I saw it was minus 47 with a lot of zeros.
I'll have to double back on you with that one. That's one I've been trying to work out because it looks like we moved something before I was here
Okay.
and took over the budget because that number was one I couldn't even fix from the first quarter.
Okay. The other thing and you know, this is more I could ask the police department on page 20, I noticed where for vehicle maintenance, for the police department, we're at 128% of the budget already by the end of June. So maybe we're just, you know, front ending vehicle repairs plus vehicle maintenance. Maybe they had a big, I don't know, maybe a squad was in an accident. I think one was, but it just stood out to me. And so I'm just looking for outliers like that.
Yeah, I could shore you up on that one. Just give me a chance to look back at it, and I'll circle back to that one to give you a short answer.
And the other one was Public Works, the 3000 department, page 26. We're at 97% of outsourced repairs. And I think I did see one of the vac trucks when I was going through the numbers for the monthly report. Looked like we spent a lot of money on an outsourced repair. So that might be what that's from. But to be at 97% at the end of June, it stood out to me.
Okay. I'll get you a short up answer on that one as well.
Okay. And those are just some of the things I looked at that, okay, and in the, oh, let's see. Overtime wages for parks and beautification, I guess. a 3,000. I'm on page 29. So at the end of June for Parks and Beautification, we've gone to 90% of our overtime. I mean, in my mind, that's the temporaries that we're hiring for summer landscaping. And I guess I was struck by the fact that by the end of June, we're already at 90% of overtime. Maybe I'm misunderstanding what that's for, but it seems high. But obviously now we're in September, so it's probably immaterial. So I'm sorry, I probably shouldn't have brought that up.
No, that's
I'm
fine.
done.
Yeah, that's one
I
of those.
realized- yeah, it's 6:29, and I think that's what we've got allotted here. Oh dear, JPNL was at 6:20. Hope Eric didn't want to go to JPNL.
It's okay. I'm on this committee.
Yes. Did you have anything, Trustee Kudo, that you were interested in talking about?
No, I think we're fine, and we're obviously short on time. So
Okay, well, thank you, Director Johnson, for your work on this.
Thank you.
I
Appreciate it.
appreciate it. And I will, is there a motion to adjourn?
I'll move to adjourn.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hey, Arthur. Who won the French fry contest?
We, okay, so we had a pretty, extensive rubric for scoring. Each restaurant could have gotten a total of 80 points through 8 categories. But granted, I was with 4 11-year-olds, so scoring wasn't always, on point, but I think the three top restaurants coming in third were Arby's Curly Fries. Second was Cousins Subs, and first was Chick-fil-A Waffle Fries. Those are the winners. And the Cousins and Chick-fil-A were pretty high, like a pretty good majority.
I've never even seen someone order Cousins fries.
Oh man, they're so good.
I don't need to know that though. That doesn't help.
With a sub, you get those fries, a sub. Maybe you want to put some fries in the sub. They're like
next
really,
episode
they're
of
pretty similar to
Wisconsin Foodie.
McDonald's fries.
Yeah, right. Yeah, we're sick of the drift list, man. Take us to Cousins.
Take
It's
us to
just
the
different
Cousins
Cousins
on
from
Oakland and Locust.
It is a local company, so we'll give it that. I thought Cousins should have won, to be honest with you, based on the scoring, but it wasn't in the cards for Cousins yesterday.
Wow. McDonald's has fallen far.
McDonald's was
Which Cousins did you go to?
mid-pack. The Burger King on Green Bay Road, right by the freeway.
Mm-hmm.
I would not recommend that place. While we were sitting in line for a very extremely long period of time for a small fry, the boys discovered that there was just a metal bucket in the middle of the middle of the parking lot, kind of right by where the trash cans were. So all these boys got out of my car to go investigate what that was, and it turned out that it was a bucket full of old meat that was just sitting in the parking lot. Pretty gross.
All right.
I did dare the kids to eat the meat, though. I said, "How much would it take to get you guys to try some of that meat in the bucket?"
On that note,
Yeah, how about if we convene? Oh, can you guys hear me?
Are we all in?
Okay.
Yes.
All right. I'd like to convene the committee of the whole of the village board at 6:33. I believe all trustees are present. Is that the case? Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Great. Thank you. We have one item for us to consider this evening, which is the use of computer-generated traffic inquiry to justify a traffic stop. Is that the correct wording? And this has been in public safety and came out of public safety with a recommendation to continue, but I directed it to committee of the whole because at that point we had 3 other trustees who had not had a chance to discuss the issue and also had not had a chance to do a ride along. And so I wanted everyone to do a ride along before we considered a possible policy change. So with that, thank you for everyone for taking the time to do that. And thank you for all the preparation that's gone into this. I guess I would like to pass it to Trustee Arndorfer as Chair of Public Safety before Chief Worth takes over, just to give us a recap of what the discussion was in public safety.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, my reception is not great, so that's why I wanted to check. I think about half of you look frozen. So anyway, yes, so 2 months ago, it may have been, I think we had a pretty robust discussion around this. You know, this is a tool that, you know, officers appreciate for a variety of reasons, and a tool that has, you know, when you see it in action on a ride along, you understand the rationale. I mean, I'm not sure I totally agree with the wording specifically. It's not a computer generated stop. It's more in a case of the officer using the computer as a tool to identify, you know, potential issue with something. Say if a, you know, license plate does not, you know, have registration or anything along those lines. That's, I'm speaking for myself there, just in terms of how I've, you know, come to absorb this. And, you know, we had, you know, a pretty lengthy discussion on this. And we, as you noted, we recommended passage. We passed this recommended passage by the broader board, largely because just based on our observation, we believe the department has been using this responsibly. You know, speaking with the officers, they, you know, were pretty clear about how this helps them perform their job, as well as, you know, protects their own safety. I.e., you know, if they're doing a stop, it's useful to know if the person they're pulling over has a, you know, what kind of, you know, a potential warrant, but, you know, let's say, so it gives them more information before they, you know, interact with the citizen. And then, you know, also there are numerous safeguards, including the cameras and whatnot, that help and that gave us confidence that this is a tool that would be used responsibly. That's why we passed. That's why we would recommend passage by the broader board. If trustees Stokebrander or Kudo have anything to add, I'm happy to hear that. Thank you.
No, this is Trustee Kudo. No, I thought the chief did a really nice job of explaining the rationale. Having spent 2 shifts on ride-alongs, I got to see, you know, why they would want this, why this is an important tool, and given the numerous redundancies in oversight that the chief has between herself and her officers, I felt comfortable passing this.
Trustee Arndorf, if I might, I guess I didn't see a motion here, and I just want to be clear. Is it fair for me to say that we're not making passing a vote? Is it more of a, are you looking for a vote here, or like some sort of a indication of support? It's, you know, it talks about, the Weiss study talked about reviewing the strategy for using a computer inquiry. And, you know, I'm comfortable making a motion if you think we need that. I can see that that could be meaningful, but I would echo what Trustee Arndorfer and Trustee Kudo said, in that my experience from my ride along was that I have the confidence in the department that we're doing the right thing in this area, and it's this is an activity by our police department that I would support going forward.
Thank you, and thanks for that clarification on process. So we're in committee of the whole, so we would not take action at this time. The reason why I wanted to take this step was because while we heard from the 3 committee members, I wanted to make sure that the other board members had time to ask questions, because this is a very technical aspect of policy. And you're right, we are not asking for a change. We're really asking for, we're considering an affirmation to continue the current policy in place. And I feel that it's important to document that through proper procedure, because this item did receive a lot of attention and concern from the public over a year ago, and wanted to make sure that we were all on the same page, because what we don't want to have happen is people feeling like they didn't get a chance to ask questions, feeling like they had to make a decision without enough information. And it's really important, as we build relationship with the police department and with under Chief Worth's leadership and her style and values around that, that we have complete transparency between the board and the police officers, and a lot of clarity over where we stand in supporting the policies that they implement every day. So for that reason, you're right, there is no motion this evening. There will be a motion on the village board agenda on the 18th. And that would be a time that we would take action. This is time for discussion, specifically for those board members who have not had a chance to participate at the Public Safety Committee and might be new to this item. So at that time I would, Trustee Stokebrand?
Thank you. Then I guess I would just point out that there was talk about, I believe in the Vice report, about having some sort of a community meeting about this issue. And that would be my only concern, that we put this before we had that sort of a meeting. And I think, you know, most of us are aware there is a group planning a meeting on September 19th about police stops. And so being aware of that, I just wonder if it'd be in the best interest of the village. You know, our next meeting, you said it's going to be on the agenda on the 18th. If we know this group is meeting in the community about this topic on the 19th, is that something we should take into consideration and wait? It's not, you know, it's not our meeting, it's their meeting. But it, you know, the Vice report did talk about us hosting a meeting, and that hasn't happened. And so that's why I would think we should discuss that. Thank you.
Appreciated. I have some, Trustee Arndorfer?
Yeah, I mean, just my recollection is that the Weiss report study was not advocating for a meeting specifically on this topic. It was more about broader community engagement. I might be misspeaking there. I did want to hold this item until later because there was a previous meeting, community meeting, that I thought would be beneficial. Speaking for myself, I would be comfortable seeing this item on the next village board meeting agenda. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it, and I will take both comments into advisory. I do see that there is Ms. Judy Wynn is on, and I believe she is a member of the group that hosted the community talk in August, with part 2 in September. So Judy, if you'd like to offer anything as to whether your group is planning to make a recommendation regarding this item. This isn't the first time we've had it on a public meeting agenda, and I believe that you've attended the previous ones where this has been identified.
Number one, our meeting, has been put off until the 26th instead of the 19th. I was going to write to all of you tomorrow after this meeting because we couldn't get the library. And number two, I don't think this is exactly what we're talking about. I may be wrong, but we were talking about not making as many traffic stops and, rethinking what the traffic stops are for. Speaking for the other members, I think we would be more comfortable if you all voted on this after the 26th. I had asked, I was hoping at the last meeting that it would be put off until then.
Oh, thank you for clarifying that.
Uh-huh.
Is there something that you're anticipating as a outgrowth of that next meeting that you would want the board to consider?
We actually are planning on that meeting being more of just getting input from everybody about how they responded to the video that we showed, and just really sort of getting direction and input in how the community's thinking about it.
Okay, and that wouldn't necessarily, it seems, based on my understanding, that seems like those two, the use of computer-generated inquiry in relation to making determinations about traffic stops can coexist with any recommendations or requests that emerge from the discussion.
I hope so. I probably need that clarified for myself because I'm finding that I don't quite understand how the two go together. But ours is more really hoping that we would reconsider what traffic stops are made for.
Mm-hmm. Okay, at this point, is that something that you would like for us to clarify for you now?
That would be great.
Okay. I'm going to recap. My understanding is that, but then I'm going to hand it over to Chief Worth to confirm. My understanding is that what we're doing is we have, Chief Worth has presented what all the statutes and policy say regarding the use of a computer basically checking plates before in determining whether to make a traffic stop or not. That's just one aspect that an officer has to make that determination. It sounds to me like what your group is considering is when and where a traffic stop is necessary.
Exactly.
And that's what you want to discuss, and that I would think that is separate from what we are discussing and considering, and what was identified in the Weiss, what we're responding to from the Weiss study. Chief Worth, do you have a sense on that? I'm sorry, I'm kind of stumbling a little bit.
That's fine. I think that it may, I may be able to clarify some of this if I get into my presentation and sort of talk about what a computer inquiry is, why do we use it, the benefits of it, and so on and so forth. So, okay. And then I'm happy to clarify or answer any questions at the end of the presentation.
That's fine. And I will pay as close attention as I can, because I did get confused when I went to the last meeting. I thought, I don't think this is exactly what we're talking about, but I wasn't sure. Okay. So I went to report. Okay, that's fine. And
sure.
And
I did send, so there is a lot of written material in today's packet. There's some responses that were prepared for Trustee Arndorfer. There's a PowerPoint presentation. There's the memorandum that was filed. So I would encourage you to read all of that because it is a great deal of information. But I'm going to dive right into the PowerPoint. So
Okay, and again, the 26th, please put that on your calendar. Okay,
Yeah, thank you.
I'm going.
And Chief Worth, I apologize for not getting to the presentation right off the bat. I kind of wanted to do a go around.
Sure, no, I appreciate that. So, and I do want to leave some time at the end as well for any questions. And I would also like to hear experiences and observations from the remaining trustees that village manager and you, President McKay, about your ride-alongs and observations for your ride-along. So, but I'm going to dive right into the PowerPoint. So, and Trustee Arndorfer, I want to thank you for recognizing the verbiage of the Weiss recommendation. I don't like the wording either. I think that the use of justify to justify a traffic stop by using a computer inquiry, I think justify has a negative connotation to it. And the language that we use in the police department to conduct a traffic stop is reasonable suspicion. And that's the law. That's the standard that officers have to have to conduct a traffic stop. But if you go to page 1, where it says traffic stops in red, yellow, and green, and really I wanted that to be sort of a designation of whether or not our traffic stops are based on bias or discriminatory factors, whether it's solely race-based or socioeconomic status or perceived bias factors, which are strictly prohibited in the police department. And they're prohibited not just by policy, but by philosophy and by my own moral code and some of the things that I've espoused to the officers. We absolutely do not conduct traffic stops, and I will not tolerate traffic stops being conducted for any reason that has a bias behind it. Next, what we're talking about is some of our cautionary traffic stops. And this is the yield. And this is where the majority of what we're talking about, what Judy's group is talking about, where most of the traffic stops fall into that. The green, of course, are our safety violations. Those are our speed, inattentive driving, reckless behaviors, those types of things. Those traffic stops are a go. And we've heard time and time again in the village that those are the traffic stops that the majority of our village, the majority of Sherwoodians, they want us to enforce those violations because they want the roadways to be safe for our motoring, bicycling, and pedestrian public, right? So, but the yellow, so traffic law compliance, and these are the low level violations that Judy's group is talking about. So equipment violations, seatbelt, those types of things. Rear view mirrors, I know that came up in the presentation put on. And then registration violations. It is, registration violations are a low level violation, but they're also mandated by state law. And by that, registration is a requirement by the state of Wisconsin that every vehicle traveling on the roadway has to be properly registered. And state law also requires that every operator of a motor vehicle has to be properly licensed to operate that motor vehicle. So that's sort of where we fall, but the computer inquiry is just one strategy that we use to conduct traffic stops, like I said. So a lot of it is based on observations of the officers. A lot of it is based on driving behaviors, violations of street signs, by stoplights, pedestrians, those types of things. So using a computer inquiry, like I said, is just one strategy that we use. And really what this allows us to do is a number of things. So a computer inquiry for the officers, it verifies the registration status of a vehicle. And it is the only way that we are able to discern whether or not a vehicle is taken or used in a major offense. So without running a registration plate, we have no idea whether or not that vehicle is stolen, whether or not it's been used or taken in a robbery or a burglary or any other major offense. So it's really a necessary tool for us to ensure that, like our policy says, that we're not only reducing traffic crashes, and that's what our safety violations are for. But we're also improving the safety and quality of life for the community through traffic law compliance. So this is one of those. Unregistered or improperly registered autos lack accountability for offenses that they may potentially be involved in. So hit and run crashes, any other major offense, because if a vehicle isn't properly registered, then the police department has no way to hold the vehicle's owner or the operator accountable for the behavior that they may potentially be involved in. Using computer inquiries to determine registration status or operator status or warrant status also creates community policing opportunities, because it doesn't have to be a violation for which the operator is cited, right? So there's a multitude of ways that the officers can end a contact like that. It could be educational. Hey, did you know that your registration sticker is missing? Or, hey, your plates are more than 30 days expired. So, here's a warning, a verbal warning or a written warning, and, get this violation fixed. Or if they're cited, they still have 10 days or longer to get that violation fixed, and the citation will be released. So it allows us an opportunity to have a positive contact with somebody who may or may not know what their vehicle's registration status is or their operating status. I mentioned officer and citizen safety, not really so in so many words, but by running a vehicle registration status, it gives the officers the ability before the contact is made to determine whether or not the operator or potential occupants have any violent felony warrants or warrants for which they're wanted by another agency. And warrants is something that I want to touch on a little bit. I know it came up in the public safety, but the only warrants that we receive in Shorewood is, so the Village of Shorewood does not issue any municipal warrants. We don't receive municipal warrants on our computer inquiries from the city of Milwaukee or any other jurisdiction. So the only warrants that we receive are misdemeanor and felony warrants through NCIC, which is the National Crime Information Center. So that's, commonly where we would get warrants is from Milwaukee County Sheriff's Office through court appearances or through Department of Corrections or other statewide warrants if they so exist. So the warrants that our officers are viewing are warrants for misdemeanor and felony statuses. So I'm going to go down to the next slide, if my computer will let me go down to the next slide, but it won't. So I'll just pull out my paper here. So like I said,
Chief, I have a question, please.
Yep.
So when you talked about the NCIC and not getting information on a warrant, say from Milwaukee PD, so they're only from the state? Is that what you're saying, state and federal?
So they're from Milwaukee County Sheriff's Office, Department of Corrections, or any other jurisdiction, but they're misdemeanor or felony warrants that are either issued by another municipality, by the state, or at the federal level.
Okay.
So no municipal warrants at all.
Right.
Okay.
So it doesn't
All right.
matter. I mean, MPD doesn't really, I'm just saying if they're from other agencies who have, a judge has said there's cause here for a warrant to be issued. And our department does not have a choice. If that warrant shows up, you have to bring them in. Is that correct?
Correct. A warrant is an order by a judge to remand somebody into custody for appearance or for someone to pay a forfeiture or some amount for bail or personal recognizance or something like that. But it's a court ordered mandate.
Okay, thank you.
So I talked a little bit about our bias-based policing policy. So I would encourage you to read that. And I just want to reassert my position as the chief of police that I will absolutely not tolerate any biased behavior by our officers, whether it's a traffic stop or any contact with whom our officers encounter. And I also mentioned on the next slide, the state statute requiring cars to be licensed or cars to be registered, operators to be licensed. Both of those state statutes are adopted by Village Code. I'd also like to remind that another aspect that was adopted by Village Code is for Shorewoodians or any Shorewood resident to have a parking permit, their car has to be properly registered. And the board also recently passed the ability for the police department to tow vehicles for parking violations when they find a vehicle is not properly registered as well. So, you know, our ability to conduct computer inquiries and determine registration status or any other factor involved with a car really falls in line with some of the things that we're already doing. I'd also like to point out that this topic of computer inquiries has been considered by multiple state level courts as well as the federal Supreme Court. And in every single one of those instances, the courts have determined that there is no expectation of privacy for registration plates that are visible to the exterior of the vehicle, and have affirmed that the officers have a right to conduct inquiries of those registration plates. And like I said, reasonable suspicion is all that's needed to conduct a traffic stop. So conducting a computer inquiry to check registration status or any other status of a vehicle for wanted vehicle or wanted individuals is provided within that reasonable suspicion for traffic stops. I mentioned a little bit earlier the outcomes for registration violations. And so individuals can be cited for a violation, and then if they are in fact cited, they have the option to correct that violation within 10 days or longer. Typically, our practice is that we give them until the next court date to correct that violation, and the citation will be dropped. They also have the ability to appear in municipal court to contest that citation. They can be given a written warning, which does not count against their driving record, a verbal warning, which also does not count against their driving record. And then they can simply just be educated about the violation and be released to be on their way. I talked a little bit about why we do computer inquiries. And so, Judy, I hope this answers your question, but computer inquiries are conducted when an officer sees a vehicle that is either a high-profile vehicle, and in our case, in Milwaukee County, and particularly across the state and every municipality across the country, we know that Kias and Hyundais are stolen at very high rates. So our officers are conducting checks on Kias and Hyundais to check whether or not they're stolen, because as I mentioned, it's the only way for us to determine whether or not a vehicle is actually entered into NCIC and is listed as being stolen. Computer inquiries are also conducted when the officers observe that the registration stickers are not on the vehicle, or registration sticker may be expired, and so on and so forth. So the officers use the computer inquiries to support their observations and support that reasonable suspicion. That's the requirement for them to actually conduct a traffic stop. We went into great detail during the public safety meeting about the accountability measures in place, and some of the accountability measures that we're already doing and also just recently added are also mentioned in the presentation material that Judy's group brought forth as well. And so I would like to say that we are meeting and exceeding some of these accountability measures. Part of it isn't due to Weiss, and part of it is due to us recognizing that these are best practices. So the traffic stop data collection form is completed after every single traffic stop that an officer conducts. And that captures demographic information for the traffic stops. We have policies that speak to prohibiting bias-based policing and a duty for an officer to report and to intercede when they observe behaviors that are against policy. We also routinely review body-worn cameras to ensure that all of our contacts and stops are conducted in a professional manner. And we do that randomly and periodically for all the stops, but we also do it for court cases that may be presented in the district attorney's office. We do that for open records requests. So there is multi-levels for every use of force that's conducted. So there are multi-layers of review of the body-worn cameras that's conducted from the officer level, where they may potentially use it as a training opportunity, to the supervisory level, to the command level, and then ultimately to me as well. So we collect all the traffic stop data. We publish weekly reports. We publish monthly reports, which detail our traffic stops. Our weekly reports detail the reason for the traffic stop. Monthly reports are published, which include the numbers of our traffic stops and demographics of our traffic stops. We've also instituted additional accountability measures for the supervisors as well, so that our supervisors now meet with their assigned officers 4 times a year. So twice a year for evaluations in June and December, but then in June and December, and then in March and September, they're doing check-ins with their officers. So looking at goals, looking at performance, looking at all the types of things that are expected of our officers, and that they're doing what's expected of them, and that they're complying with all of the policies and so on and so forth. So really just checking in with them and seeing how they're doing and meeting our standards that is set forth and talked about regularly. I also have met with the officers on multiple occasions. I'll be doing that bi-yearly, meeting with them. So just to reinforce the messaging, I send weekly updates to the officers' communication about matters of importance and areas that I want to cover, and make sure that our officers are fully informed and understand what's expected of them, changes in those types of things. So, and then the other emphasis that we've placed is on training. And I know that this was also a recommendation from Weiss, but it's something that I firmly believe in making sure that our officers have the best and most up-to-date training, and not just in our tactical skills, but also in other skill sets. So, you know, I guess if you want to call them soft skills, whether they're fair and impartial policing, professional communications, our de-escalation training, crisis intervention training. Those are some of the softer skills, and not just the tactical skills that our officers are involved in. But that really also sets a standard that, you know, force or, you know, a negative contact with somebody doesn't have to be the only outcome between the police and our community. So understanding the dynamics of how our officers interact with everybody on the best day of their life and potentially on the worst day of their life, right? And sometimes traffic stops are the worst day for some people. And then Weiss also mentioned, and this is something that I, again, feel extremely passionate about, but is retaining psychological services for our officers, which we've done, and we're now moving next month into beginning our 2nd year of this. But all of our officers go to yearly wellness check-ins, and counseling services are provided for the officers should they be needed. But it's really an opportunity for our officers, that ability to decompress, because police work is stressful, and we believe, or I believe, and we as a department believe, that if our officers are the best version of themselves, they'll be the best version to serve the community as well. So that's really about all the PowerPoint that I have. I hope that I've answered many of the questions that you might have, but I'm happy to answer any questions, and go over any topic that may potentially be unclear. But the other thing is, like I mentioned, I really want to hear from the other trustees, their observations during their ride-alongs, experiences, and so on and so forth. I'll probably get into it just a little bit when in the next in the village board meeting when we go through the semi-annual report. But some of that data that I talked about, and this really supports our computer inquiry, but the number of our gun recoveries has doubled in 6 months than we recovered in all of last year. Many of those gun recoveries are from the traffic stops that we've conducted, and almost all of those gun recoveries are attached to prosecutable cases in front of the district attorney's office. So our officers are conducting very good stops, and helping to keep Shorewood safe from people who may intend to do somebody harm, whether it's in Shorewood or elsewhere. But our officers are doing excellent work, and I couldn't be more proud of them. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to anybody who may speak, any questions that you may have. But again, I would like to hear from the trustees about their experiences. You're muted, President.
Thank you. Sorry about that.
Mhm.
I would like to turn it over so we can hear from the trustees and take questions, and then I can open it back up to the public. So questions or sharing your experience. Trustee Ursink.
So I'll go first here, seeing that I probably went last out of everybody to do the ride along. I really appreciate your patience on that, Chief. You know, I was just you know, so honored to be able to, you know, spend some time with Officer Sydney. I forget her last name, but I do remember her first name. And walking into the department on a Saturday, it was all women officers, which I thought was a fantastic sort of fantastic scenario. But yeah, Sydney was great. It was really enlightening. Every time I get the opportunity, whether it be a walk along or a ride along, it's just opened my eyes to a different side of Shorewood and a different perspective on the community. And it's something that I'd like to do more frequently. You know, when I'm sitting there and talking to the officer, I'm always telling myself this is something I should schedule at least once a month if they'll have me, because you know, you see a lot, and you just have so much more respect for our law enforcement community. So really appreciated the time I had with Sydney. 3 hours went by, you know, within, you know, it seemed like 5 minutes. You know, so I think you know, personally where I stand is you know, I'm a firm believer in technology, and you know, I think that, you know, there's more that we could probably do with technology in Shorewood. And I, you know, just sitting with the officer and kind of talking, you know, through her story and her observations, you know, I think the computer system that we have is very relevant, and much needed, very helpful for you know, for policing in Shorewood. And you know, I'd like to also see upgrades in our technology that, you know, so hopefully that's something we can look at. I know that you know, budgets are always tight, but would love to definitely, you know, entertain the idea of future sort of, you know, technological upgrades. I know that we talked personally about flock cameras and you know, other sort of technology within, you know, police cars that are, you know, that can scan license plates. So taking it to the next level, as opposed to punching in a license plate number, there's cameras that can identify license plates. So I'm all in favor of technology in the community, and I'm very grateful for the time Sydney gave me, and thank you, Chief Worth, for being patient with me and my schedule. So, but a very positive experience, and I look forward to taking doing another ride along.
Thank you, Trustee Ursink. We'll have you every month. We'll have all the trustees every month.
Trustee Ursink, did you have any questions regarding the presentation?
No, I did not. It was all straightforward and, you know, a lot of it made sense.
Okay. Trustee Lynn or Trustee Baldoff? Trustee Lynn?
Yeah, I'm happy to chime in here. So, yeah, I also had a very fulfilling experience on my ride along. And Chief Worth, I owe you an email. I got an email from you right afterwards, and then, excuse me, got locked out of my email account, and then started school, and I've been very busy. But I do have some feedback that I'm happy to send you in the email. But the experience was great. Officers were excellent all evening. It was a wonderful experience all around, and very eye-opening for me, and I really appreciate the opportunity to do it. I do have one question kind of regarding this computer software and kind of something that you touched on right at the end of the presentation, which was regarding guns. So that same topic was brought up on my ride along at just the volume of guns that you guys are finding. Just to kind of narrow the focus on this computer program, does this help alert officers if the person they're pulling over maybe has a concealed carry license on file, or if they have some past firearm issues on their record? Like, is there any way that this computer system is helping us with the firearm problem?
Sure. And so we don't get registration status for carrying concealed weapon. That's not a query that pops up on our computer. So we don't have that information. And for us to determine the criminal history of an individual is more than just a simple computer inquiry for running a registration plate. So we have to make sure that we're properly identifying the person with whom we're having contact, and then enter their information into another system that actually shows us what their criminal history is. So the computer inquiry that we're specifically talking about just shows us registration, operation status, and then warrant status. So we have to dig just a little bit more deeper to get criminal history. So, which is possible, but it's a little more time consuming than just entering a plate into a computer.
Okay, that's kind of what I thought.
Mhm.
My understanding was, so I appreciate that clarification, but I just
You're welcome. Mhm.
shared that concern because we talked about it at length while we were driving, and just how big of a problem guns are. They just seem to be everywhere. Everybody seems to have one. So
Right.
appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Trustee Moore Baldoff?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a whole lot else to add. I enjoy getting to do the ride along, echo the comments of others that I would definitely like to do it again, and share the same concern that Trustee Lynn and others brought up about guns. You know, anything we can do to be a part of getting guns that are not, legally held off of, out of the community is a good thing. It's a concern for domestic violence issues. It's a concern for the deaths by suicide we've seen. We just don't want people having guns if they are not supposed to be having a gun. So I'm very supportive of any of the efforts there and appreciate the work that has been done to date on that front. But otherwise, I don't really have anything else to add.
Okay. And any questions about the presentation? Either of you? Okay. Yep, I had a similar experience on the road, and I think what struck me the most was, once you're in that squad car sitting on Capitol, I went during part of the targeted enforcement initiative that was in response to concerns around Capitol Drive. You have, it was very clear that all you can watch for is kind of car behavior. It's by the time you see a car, have a question, you need to get that license plate. You don't have time to look at who's in the car, and you really can't. There's just so much that the officer is keeping track of all at one time. It's really impressive, A. And B, between all the policies and procedures and checks and balances that we have, plus the high level of integrity and professionalism, and really the dedication around, you know, keeping major streets like Capitol and Oakland as safe as possible with the volume of traffic that go through there. I was really glad that the officer, you know, had the ability to and could remember the plate number to put it into the computer and determine what to do next. So, and I also saw very consistent behavior and follow through on all the cars that were pulled over, and people were treated with respect and treated the same in an equitable manner as far as seeing things through. It wasn't like, you know, pulled over this car, oh, it's somebody who looks like a grandma dropping somebody off, so I'm not going to go talking to them. You know, it's just like following through, having the conversation and doing the job. So that's what, and I don't have any technical questions about the presentation.
Thank you. President McKeag, one of the things that I failed to mention, and I mentioned how extremely proud I am of the officers and the work that they're doing, because they are doing an extremely professional job, and they have a great deal of integrity. And this came out during one of the touch bases that Trustee Arndorfer had with the officers. And the level of accountability that they hold themselves to. So certainly there's a level of accountability that I and the other commanders hold them to, and the supervisors as well. But how they hold themselves accountable and understanding the importance of law enforcement, not just as a profession and some of the scrutiny that we've faced, but as law enforcement in Shorewood, and understanding what the community expects of us and upholding some of those values and some of the values of the police department, and some of their own moral values and how we do the job that we do, why we do it, and really reinforcing that level of integrity that you just spoke about. So I failed to mention that, and I just really want to put that out there, because I've got a great team, and they're really doing an excellent job.
And we did talk about gun possession as well, and just the reality that, you know, concealed carry is legal in Wisconsin, and a lot of people do carry guns, and they're allowed to carry guns, and so that's not an automatic either, right? There's a lot of care and consideration that goes through all of these interactions, and so that was, you know, something that I could only learn, you know, up close. So okay, any questions from the public? Judy in particular, since we already engaged.
Okay. Thanks, and thank you very much. This helped me understand exactly what the computer increase is. I guess, you know, my thought is it's sort of like a Venn diagram that, you know, we're asking for a piece of, you know, not the whole, not to have computer increase. So I'm just hoping that you all will come on the 26th so that we can sort of talk about what you talked about and how the Woman from NYU's presentation sort of fits together. And if there are things that could be, and again, we'll send you all reminders for that. But this clarified a lot about how you use, what you use those increase for. So thank you. And you'll get a reminder, I promise.
I appreciate that. I guess I do want to, I'll also say I want to encourage, you know, any trustee who wants to participate in that community discussion, of course, is welcome to. But as it's not a village meeting, we probably would not be discussing possible policy considerations there. We would be more listening to around what residents have to say. Great. I would to just keep that in mind.
Okay, thank you. That clarifies it for us too.
And the direction that the board has received is, you know, that we are looking at this. Chief Worth has done a great job kind of framing what it is, the mandate of what law enforcement means. And so keeping in mind that if we open up a discussion of what we want to direct the police to respond to and what we want them not to respond to. Right now, they're only responding to statutory direction. You know, they're taking their direction and enforcement from the statutes, so, and ordinance. So if we were as a board to say, you know, we don't want you to enforce that statute, that's what we would be doing at this point. So just to keep in mind that it's not as much of an a la carte as we might think. So I think I'm going to likely move ahead with the this one policy area for affirmation. But if you have requests around different types of practices in the future, you can bring those forward.
Okay, yeah, you mean the future being on the 26th?
Mhm.
And
Well,
other, okay, great.
but you would bring them to the village board, since that would be the
Got
public.
it. Okay.
Uh-huh.
And the public meeting of just, yeah, we're seeing it as a listening session. Yeah.
Exactly, right.
That's what we're seeing. So please come and talk. Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, if there's no further discussion, we can close this item, and I could take a motion to adjourn. Trustee Stokebrand.
I just had two quick things. Number one, I'm going to be at a CDA and a plan commission meeting that night, and I'm guessing President.
Oh,
McKay
right,
and
yeah,
Trustee-
I will be too.
I'm sorry, Trustee Ursink and Trustee Kudo will be also. So I was just looking at my calendar, and so, because I did have the 19th down, but I cannot attend their meeting on the 26th because of that other meeting. And the other thing I wanted to mention was I know Trustee Ursink talked about the importance of technology, and my focus is on training. And so I would just like to ask Chief Worth on the slide about fair and impartial police training, de-escalation, crisis intervention training, and as someone who has their hands in the budget a little bit, I'd like to know where we are. You have a staff of what, 25, 26? Like, how far are we? What's your goal? Like in 1 to 2 years? I know you're not at full staff, but where are we with your idea of we've got training really, we're where we want to be? And is it more a question of scheduling because the size of our department, and some of these I think are fairly involved training sessions where they're taken out of the staffing rotation? And or is it more a question of us coming up with the money for the training? That's what I want to know.
So my personal belief is we'll never be where I want us to be at for training, because law enforcement evolves every single day, right? So there are always new things for us to learn, new things for us to do, ways for us to continually improve. So we'll never be where I want us to be. And you mentioned that fair and impartial policing, crisis intervention, those are each week-long trainings. So de-escalation is a week-long training. So to take somebody out of service requires us to fill positions and backfill and those kinds of things. So it is definitely of utmost importance to me that we get as many people trained in that, and we're doing it as we can. But one of the other steps that we've taken, because we know that it isn't realistic to send everybody every single year to trainings that are a week long or longer, right? So when our officers go to those types of trainings, they have to come back and they have to share takeaways with their peers. And that's in the form of putting together a Word document or a short PowerPoint presentation or something, so that even if that another officer can't attend right away, are there takeaways that they can share amongst peers and you know, I guess enhance some of that accountability, because now one person is training. So, you know, the old adage that knowledge is power, right? Well, shared knowledge is power, and it really empowers our officers to learn from one another and to have some of that camaraderie and to hold each other accountable in some of the things that they're evolving and learning. So I hope that answers your question, but part of it is staffing. Budgetarily, we're good. Could I always use more money? Absolutely. Everybody could, but it will. For as long as I'm chief here, training will always be of utmost importance to me, to ensure that we're staying abreast of best practices and and giving our officers the tools that they need to serve Shorewood in the best capacity they can.
Thank you.
All right, motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All right, any objections? We are adjourned at 7:28. See you back here in 2 minutes. Is this the same link?
It is,
Yes, it is.
Okay, so we can just stay on.
Hi, everyone. This is Bree. Are we all over Teams tonight? For some reason, I thought we were in person.
Good evening. This is Clerk Carol. We are in Teams tonight.
Oh, okay. Thank you. My Teams isn't working. I'm outside of the City Hall building, so I'm calling from my phone. But I will join Teams as soon as I'm able to. But I'm here.
Thank you. And your name again? I'm sorry.
Brianna Meyer. I'm filling in for Nathan Byer.
Thank you, Brianna. I'll note that.
Thank you.
I'm sorry. I wasn't back on time. All right, are we all here? Is Jim back?
He is.
Okay, great. I don't know why, but my team screen is not really cooperating. All right, I'd like to call the village board, meeting of the village board to order at 7:32. Thank you everyone for being here. All trustees are present. Has this meeting been publicly noticed?
The meeting has been properly noticed and posted according to law.
Thank you very much. And we will get started, continuing on to item 4, special order of business for a presentation of semi-annual police department report. Chief Worth. Oh, I think you're muted.
You're right. I was muted. All right. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time actually on the narrative portion of the semi-annual report. Some of which I talked about in the committee of the whole, some of which has already been presented when I gave an update about my status and those types of things. So I'll certainly answer any questions that you might have. Talked a little bit about where we stand with the Weiss study, my emphasis on training and some of the training that we've attended. The communications plan is also provided and was emailed to all of the trustees collectively that we talked about. Some of our community engagement, collaboration, and process improvements, all of which are continuing, and we place an emphasis on promotions, hiring, and retention. We have a new officer starting on Monday, so we have one of our 2 spots filled. So definitely looking forward to that. And then some of the year 1 to year 3 goals that you can also read through. I think what mostly everybody is interested in is the statistics. And so the statistics that we've compiled are, you'll recognize, are very similar to what's published in the monthly report. So we break down some of the activity and the notable citations, and this is all of it is in the report that was published for tonight's meeting. But possession of THC marijuana is our highest cited offense, and you can see the breakdown there. And then the calls for service. In the public safety meeting, the calls for service was inaccurate. So we're the 3rd highest in the North Shore for calls for service, behind Brown Deer and Glendale. And our calls for service, as you can see on the next chart, is on the rise compared to 2021 and 2022. And then typically what we see after the summer is they dip just a little bit, but ours are continuing to rise, much like 2021. So some of that is self-generated activity, but a lot of it is calls for service and a reliance on our residents to engage our officers in calls. So, but you know, I don't find calls for service, the increase in calls for service, negative. I think that's a very positive for us. Like I said, some of it is self-generated, so our officers going out and doing business checks and doing park checks and vacation checks and so on and so forth, which we've placed an emphasis on for the officers to get out, to get engaged, to be interactive with our community, and to do some of that crime prevention on the front end. So those are some of the things that that are contributing to the increased calls for service. And it's also an education piece. Why should people call the police? You know, and we're trying to reinforce. We sometimes get emails, hey, I saw something suspicious and can you check it out 2 days later? And, you know, those are the types of calls that we need right away. So it really is an education piece for us as well. Gives us an opportunity to educate our residents why they should call the police and those types of things. So municipal citations, largely driven from that prior slide that you could see. The downturn between May and June isn't something unusual in law enforcement. Typically May starts vacation season. So I suspect, as you can see, after August and into September, both the spikes in 21 and 22, they go back up after vacation season. So we're right where I want us to be with municipal citations and traffic citations. We're on pace too for our Part 1 crime. And the Part 1 crimes are defined by the FBI. So homicides, rapes, robberies, burglaries, assaults, thefts, motor vehicle thefts, arsons. We're, like I said, right where and consistent with our patterns from last year. And you can see that in the next chart as we go down. But I mentioned in the committee of the whole the number of guns that we recovered. So in in this year alone, in the first 6 months, we've recovered 26 guns, 8 during traffic stops, 16 of them are evidence guns, and then 2 all others. So 16, like I said, are prosecutable cases. Half of them are recovered from traffic stops. In July 1st, so the slide was updated, additional guns, and that's double than what we recovered from last year. So the next slide, crime comparison by year, puts us really on pace for where we were in all of last year. Theft continues to be the driver of our Part 1 crimes. So if you recall, we had a spike in theft of mail and then subsequent fraud cases, which are categorized differently, but theft really is the driver. So theft in everything from retail theft, theft from person, theft from garages, theft from vehicles, so on and so forth. So that's really what's captured within that crime category. Parking citations, we're on pace to exceed where we were in all of last year. So all of that is broken down by violation. And then really let's get into the next nuts and bolts, and this is the uses of force. So I know that this was of interest in the public safety, just the increase in the first 6 months of the use of force then was captured in all of last year and 2021. So we're outpacing that. But really what I'd like to mention is that of those 14 uses of force, 8 of them are strictly pointing and aiming a firearm at an individual. So that could be a situation where our officers were conducting a high-risk traffic stop, so a traffic stop that was taken or used in a major offense, stolen, involved an individual that they suspected to be engaged in illegal activity, whether it's narcotics or weapons possession or something. So more than half of those uses of force are just strictly pointing and aiming to gain compliance and hopefully avoiding the necessity of going hands-on or using increased force to detain and take an individual into custody. The additional breakdown of whether or not they were Shorewood residents or outside residents, and then the demographics of those uses of force. So, and then less than, or just about a quarter of a percent of every police contact results in a use of force. So 0.26 of every contact results in a use of force. Again, just broken down by month. Even with the increased uses of force, it calls for service, and then where we stand for traffic stops and municipal citations. One of the things that I'm most proud about is the number of complaints that we received this year, which is a big fat 0. And that's even after the complaint forms were increased by Weiss recommendation, and the availability of complaint forms and the way that our residents or anybody who's aggrieved by police contact can actually file a complaint. So, and I think that really speaks to, as I mentioned in the committee of the whole, the integrity of our officers and the professional demeanor and behaviors of our officers as well. So that's a number that I'm extremely proud about. And then our year-to-date traffic stop data, there's the demographic breakdown. It's almost 50-50, 42-48% demographic white versus African-American or Black. And then an additional slide for the breakdown of traffic stops. And I mentioned this before also about the warrants, but the summary arrests or physical custody of our individuals and the demographics by that. So white and African American, and then some of the other demographics. And then the charges, so carrying concealed weapon, drug possession, resisting an officer, and so on and so forth. And then the demographic breakdown. Some additional and some notes and additional statistic analysis. This was prepared after some questions were raised by Trustee Arndorfer. I'm not going to go through it. You can take a look at it. Happy to answer any questions that you may have about it, and also broke down every single use of force, which sort of details the time that it occurred, the location that it occurred, who the force was used against, what the force was, what the violation was that led to the force being used, and whether or not there was an opportunity for training or in professional communications or anything like that. And in this case, there was one opportunity for that. So, and then for the uses of force, just a reminder, the layers that the uses of force are evaluated. The officer files their use of force. A supervisor then files their use of force based on their investigation of the officer's force. The supervisors respond to the scene, if practical for them, and file and conduct their own independent investigation after the officers file their report, review body-worn camera, squad videos, conduct witness interviews if applicable, and then it goes to one of the two captains, and then it ultimately comes to me for review. So multi layers of review in those uses of force. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have. There's a lot of information there. Some of it is redundant to the things that we've already discussed, but wanted to provide this opportunity and material for you in case you had any questions or comments. You're muted, President McKay.
Questions from trustees? Trustee Stokbrand?
First of all, I'd like to thank you for the summary and especially outlining the use of force. It was insightful for me, and I know it had to take some time, but I found it valuable and meaningful. I just had a question about the staffing. So we had one detective retire, and you hope to. This is in conflict with the Weiss study, which recommended that we just have a police officer do detective work. So you are actively hiring for another detective?
Not exactly. So, and if the recommendation of Weiss to have a police officer do it, the board made the decision to allow me the ability to keep two detectives. So what we're in the process of doing right now, we just hired one police officer to fill Officer Mark Meyer's spot. And we are conducting, I guess, on the job reviews of our officers that are interested in ascending to that detective position. Identifying training needs, training opportunities for those who may potentially be interested in that position. So the detective promotion will be an internal promotion, and then we'll hire a police officer to fill that position once the detective is promoted.
Okay, and then I notice in your process improvements, you talk about command staff identified and implemented procedures to improve efficiencies in the use of staff overtime. And so I'm wondering, what does that mean to the village? Does that mean there'll be less overtime costs? Will there be fewer targeted patrols or grants? What does that mean in improve efficiencies in the use of overtime?
Sure, and I'm going to let Captain Santiago speak to that just a little bit, but he was largely responsible for putting some of those efficiencies in place, so I certainly want to give him credit and opportunity to speak. And we did an analysis on overtime, and it's something that we monitor regularly, and where we're at, and making sure that we're using it appropriately. But we also want to point out that we've had 2 vacancies since May, essentially. And so there have been situations in which we've had to backfill. Now, when we try to fill some of the grants are all funded and reimbursed financially. But the Capital Drive initiative is something that we're doing, where we're allowing the officers to accrue personal time as opposed to being paid overtime. So, but I'm going to let Captain Santiago speak just a little bit to improving some of the efficiencies and some of the observations that he's made.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. There isn't, I mean, a huge formula or some magic trick. It's mainly just paying attention as to how people are spending their time and places where we can cut. I mean, we do have a lot of overtime. We do have we're short all the time, so it's going to happen no matter what. And basically what I've done is done a lot of online training and just kind of pick my places where people are going to go to training. I know Trustee Stokerbrand, you mentioned how difficult it is to schedule training, and it is very difficult. But instead of going to the same places all the time, I found that if I research online and talk to other police officers and other people that I know in the past, I can find schools that might have better options for some of our officers so that we can save some of that money. It's as simple as utilizing most of our staff. I mean, in the past at times, the same people always did certain functions like interviewing candidates, for example, for the position of police officer. Well, if that person was off or not working, then that would cost 3 hours of overtime. Since Chief Worth started, we've actually been utilizing most of our people. We send them to training. They know what we're expecting. They know what is expected from them during the interview. So if somebody happens to be on shift, then we just select the day for the interview where we might be up one officer and that person that helps us do the interviews. So it's nothing drastic. It's just paying attention to the schedule, paying attention to the places where we can cut a little bit of that overtime fat so that we can be productive, do the same things that we have to do, that we need to get done, but do it in a way that helps our police department.
Okay, thank you. Because my understanding from the community is that they're appreciating the extra targeted patrols on Capitol Drive, especially now that school is starting. And so I guess when I saw the efficiencies in overtime, I was just hoping that you could continue to do the targeted patrols in that area.
Yeah, and that is something that is as simple as, for example, the minimum on second shift is 4 officers. If they happen to have 5, especially when people might not be on vacation, then 1 officer is assigned to do the targeted enforcement during that shift.
Okay, thank you. And I did also pay attention to the exterior improvements, and I'm still hoping we get a bike rack in front of the Shorewood Police Department. Thank you.
All right, other trustees? All right, opening it to
I'm sorry.
Oh, Trustee Lynn, I'm sorry, I didn't see you.
I'm sorry. I just have a couple of questions with regards to promoting one officer into the detective role. I'm assuming that would come with a pay raise as well. Is that correct?
Correct.
Do you know roughly what that would be in terms of like an annual salary? Are we talking like a $10,000 raise? You know, what's kind of like the rough range?
I mean, if you give me a couple of minutes, I can just pull up the union contract and take a look at it.
And that'd be fine. And even if you email me sometime next
sure.
week, that's fine too. That's fine.
Okay.
Too. I'm curious about that, you know, just part of, you know, just the general thought that, you know, the police is the biggest thing in our budget. And just managing kind of these costs and kind of being aware of when things are bumping up. And maybe it's a net even, you know, change, which is fine, but just want to keep kind of track of some of those things.
Sure. Yeah. And it's just replacing a retired position instead of
Sure.
adding.
So it could theoretically even be less of a budgetary expense if that person retiring had more seniority and a higher pay rate at that time anyways too. So
Correct. Mhm.
that totally makes sense.
Yep.
Other than that, I appreciate that. And like I mentioned earlier, I'm putting together an email to send you in a little bit, hopefully later this week as well. So thank you.
All right, thank you, Trustee Lynn. All right, any members of the public who would like to be heard or have questions? I am not seeing any hands. All right, then thank you very much, Chief Worth, Captain Santiago, and Captain Robleski for being here this evening and for all the great service that you provide.
Thank you so much for your time. Have a great night, everybody.
You too. All right, moving on to consider award of contract for Shorewood Sewer Outfall Slope Stabilization Project 4480 Lake, and consider resolution 2023-16 declaring official intent to reimburse. I am going to ask Manager Ewald. This was deferred from a previous meeting, so if you can kind of tee us up to where we're at. I know that we have an extensive memo in front of us, but are there anything in particular that we should keep in mind as we consider this?
Sure, and I'm gonna welcome on Phil Buduzek, who is our village engineer who joins the call. Hi, Phil.
Hello, good evening, everyone.
I'm gonna let you take it away to talk about our bid opening and next steps.
Okay, yeah, so this, we last, I think, provided an update sometime in the spring regarding this project, and the next step was to receive bids. So bids were received in late June, on June 27th, 2023. We had 2 bids, which actually we were surprised. We thought we may only get 1 bidder for this project. So that was a positive. The bids came in on the high end of the engineer's opinion of probable cost. I think all of you are aware of the project. This is the project where we had the bluff failure and the storm sewer subsequently was damaged, and then we have the retaining wall that we're trying to stabilize the bluff above the retaining wall. So I guess I'll open it up to questions at this point. I think everybody's should be pretty up to speed on the project.
So just to recap, it is pretty clear that there is a huge difference between the 2 bids, and so the lower of the 2 is being recommended to us to take action on. Are there any questions? All right, hearing none, I would take a motion. Oh, sorry, Trustee Stokbrand.
Yeah, I guess, when I looked through the numbers, it looked like, and you can't answer for the people doing the bidding, but it really made me nervous when, the lower bid, one of the categories that really came in a lot lower was things like erosion control. And I'm trying to find the other one. These clearly blew your estimates out of the water. What can you, and we have no recourse, right, with Miller or the original contractor. We just keep going down this road where we spend more. And if we try to spend less now instead of spending more, I'm nervous about the huge difference in the categories like erosion control, and I can't think of what the other one is right now, but they were significant. I think the one had erosion control at 12,000. The higher bid was almost 70,000. Vegetation management plan, which to me is another form of erosion control. I could be wrong. The low bid we want to accept is about 14 grand, and the high bid is 92,000. Can you help me make sense of that?
Yeah, so what happened there is there was an addendum that was issued that reduced the scope of the vegetation management plan and put some of it on the homeowner to complete the maintenance after initial installation. So the initial contract had like a 5-year vegetation management establishment plan. And honestly, that's more of an aesthetic. I know it will certainly help prevent surface erosion and whatnot, but for the long-term stability of the bluff, the piles that are being driven are what are going to stabilize the bluff in that area. And the vegetation management plan itself, like I said, the initial plan that was included in the contract is what the second bidder bid on. They didn't understand the addendum, I guess, so that's why they were at 90,000. And then Preparo, the low bidder, provided a price based on the addendum and was at 13,000. So that's what the difference is there. It's the 4 years of maintenance to properly establish it, which it's, that quite honestly, it's a large effort to have somebody coming on the private property and, pulling weeds and that sort of thing. So we decided to put that on the property owner.
Okay, and we've got a written agreement, or they're just aware that the bid specs changed, the property owner is aware the bid specs changed, or there was this addendum, and they know
Yes.
that that's now on them.
Yes.
Okay. And so then, do we need the both motions? Is that correct? I see 2 in the packet.
Yeah, we would take them separately.
Okay.
Hi guys, it's Bree. Before we get there, there was a mention of recourse earlier. This is just a friendly reminder that anything with litigation, whether it's prospective or impossible or anything like that, should be saved for closed session. So just a friendly reminder.
Appreciated. Hi, Bree.
I'm ready to make a motion then if you're ready to entertain one.
Mhm.
One final question. Is there a reason that we're making this a line item contract? I don't recall ever making a motion before with that language, just so I understand what my motion is meaning.
Anyone?
Rebecca, do you want to comment on that? I'm not sure. I assume that just means there's the unit prices bid for the contract, but I didn't write the motion. I think Leanne probably did.
I did not write it either. However, it was.
Bree?
Yeah, thanks. And if you guys don't mind, I just have a need legal assistant who won't get off my lap, so I'll turn my camera on, but it's not working. It's my dog won't leave me alone. But with regards to the motion, it's just written that way. So, well, my understanding is it's written that way to clarify what exactly you're approving. So the more description we can give to what contract you're approving, the better. And because it's a line item contract, we want the record to be clear that we're approving a line item contract.
Okay. If you're ready, President McKay.
I am.
I move award of a line item contract to CW Preparo for the sewer outfall slope stabilization project in the amount of $448,965.00.
Second.
All right. Motion by trustee Stokbrand, seconded by trustee Moore Baldoff. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, motion carries 7-0. Is there a motion to approve the resolution?
I'm prepared to do that. I just want to confirm that. So we will look at this project after this work has been done. And then there will be an understanding between the homeowner and us as to whether that driveway needs to be redone a second time. Is that true?
Yeah, that's correct.
We already repaved this driveway once, right?
Correct. Yeah, the hope is that it won't be damaged. The equipment isn't going to be as heavy, but we have an allowance. It's an allowance. So if it's not used, it's not, wouldn't be part of the contract. That would be reimbursed to the village essentially, or not billed.
And so is there, I don't see any dates in that. And that obviously then we don't need that. We don't need something that says, we're going to give this 8, get through one freeze thaw cycle.
No, it would be, so at the end of the project, when all the work is complete, we would walk the site with the homeowner. And at that point, we will videotape it too. So we have evidence that it was intact at the end of construction or damaged, I guess, whatever it is. And then, yeah, if there's no damage, then that work doesn't get completed and it's removed from the contract.
And so we should know that by the end of this calendar year.
There's seeding has to occur next year. We're too late in the season to do the hydro seeding, so it'll be next April, May would be when the hydro seeding is completed. So that'd be the last time any equipment from the project would be on site.
So we will go through a freeze thaw cycle on this.
Correct.
Okay. All right, President McKagan, if you're ready.
Yeah, actually, I'm really glad you brought that up. Is there a definition of damage?
It would be if there's a crack that isn't there now.
Okay, thank you.
And like I said, we'll document that beforehand in case he's had, landscapers or heavy equipment on there now that's created cracks. We're going to document all before construction and after construction.
Okay.
And even after, I guess, when they finish up in the fall here, there's going to be that period where no work's completed until next spring. So I'll make sure that we get a video of what it looks like after the work this fall. So if a plow truck or something damages it over the winter, we're not blamed for it.
Thank you.
My 2 cents is that if a word is not defined in a contract, it reverts to the common meaning. So if there's no definition of damage in the contract, when the contract is interpreted later, it will go by its plain meaning. So whatever is in the dictionary.
So like if Phil is talking crack and someone, a landowner, property owner says chips, are you saying?
Well, it depends. I don't believe the contract says cracks. It says damage. Is that correct?
I would have to look to see the specific language, but
So the ordinary definition of damage, if that's the case, is that physical harm caused to something in such a way as to impair its value, usefulness, or normal function.
It doesn't say aesthetic, right?
It depends on how you interpret the definition.
I guess I will rely on the expertise of our staff and make the motion as presented.
And I assume that our attorney has reviewed this before it came to us because they wrote it.
Oh, then yes, I would imagine that Nathan has reviewed it. And if Nathan's approved it, then I give my stamp of approval as well.
Okay, confirming Manager Ewald, Attorney Bear has approved this.
My understanding is that he has communicated with Director Butchlick. She's not here this evening, but she does conduct reviews with him. If that is for some reason uncertain, we'll be back before you.
Okay, so taking action tonight is not a concern.
I don't believe.
No.
Okay. All right. Thank you for the extra care with that. I will take a motion at this time.
I will move to approve resolution 2023-16 declaring official intent to reimburse expenditures from proceeds of borrowing.
I'll second.
All right, this time I'll give it to Trustee Lynn. Motion by Trustee Stokbrand, seconded by Trustee Lynn. Any further discussion? Hearing none, this will be a roll call vote.
Trustee Kudo,
Aye.
Trustee Marbaldoff,
Yes.
President McKaig,
Aye.
Trustee Lynn,
Aye.
Trustee Ursink,
Aye.
Trustee Stokbrand,
Aye.
Trustee Arndorfer.
Aye.
Motion carried 7-0.
Thank you. Moving on to the SRC Sustainability Planning Update. We have Sue Bronson with us from the Elder Services Advisory Board, the chairperson. I will hand it over to you to provide this. Obviously, we have information in our materials this evening. that outlines the entire process that's being contemplated or planned. Sue, if you'd like to say anything, you don't have to read through everything. If there's anything you'd like to point out in particular, otherwise we can leave it open for questions.
So what I'd like to first point out is planning is better than last minute decisions. So we know that some changes will need to be made at some point in the future when Elizabeth chooses to retire or unforeseen things happen. So we want to plan rather than worry about the last minute and doing something at that time. The main things I want to look at is that we had a report done by Sue Kelly that gave us information and talked about options. And then the Elder Services Advisory Board brought together our ideas, values, concerns, and sort of some criteria that were important to us to judge any final ideas by. And we're working on focus groups, setting up questions, bringing people from various decades, people with different concerns, both people who have used and not used the senior resources. And then again, bring Sue Kelly back to talk with key stakeholders about where are their gaps, how can those gaps be filled. So that's the basic plan, and open for questions.
And this is for presentation only. Obviously, we don't have any jurisdiction over this. Thank you. Questions?
We want to keep you informed.
Exactly. And we appreciate that. Questions, comments? Trustee Stokbrand.
Well, thank you in advance for doing planning. And I just wanted to clarify then, so there's no village tax levy money used here? Is it like the consultant, I believe, is paid for through the Benjamin Fund? Is that correct?
The consultant is using the Benjamin Fund, correct. And whatever the final plan is, we know that Elizabeth's salary, for example, is paid by the village. So we want to be taking into account keeping the same or lowering rather than raising village expense.
Thank you for the clarification.
It's one of our criteria.
Well, I agree with Trustee Stokbrand. Thank you for planning. We need to look into the future, and this is an appreciated resource in the community. So thank you for your leadership on this board. And I look forward to the outcome.
So do I.
Wonderful. All right. Thank you for being here tonight. Moving on, we have the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All right, motion to approve the consent agenda by Trustee Moore Baldoff, seconded by Trustee Ursink. Any discussion? I'd like to pull 5B. Any other discussion? Trustee Stokbrand?
You're muted.
Sorry, I'd like to pull 5C as in cat and D as in David.
Anything else? All right, seeing and hearing none. All those in favor of accepting the consent agenda with the exception of 5B, C, and D, say aye.
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 Okay.
Aye.
Any abstentions? All right. Motion carries. Moving on to items removed. Item 5B, village minutes. I contacted Clerk Harrell this morning saying that I think it in the Shorewood Today item, it said that trustee Kudo recused and trustee Arndorfer voted no, but I believe it was trustee Arndorfer who recused himself and trustee Kudo who voted no. So just a flip. Were there any other things about minutes, trustee Stokebrand?
I had that also, and so it would be a 4-2-1 vote, I believe. And then also on item, let's see, 9, new business. G is in good. Motion carried by a unanimous vote of 6-1. Obviously, that's not unanimous, so we just have to remove that word. Thank you.
And then did it designate the no vote?
It did.
Okay. Thank you. Anything else on minutes? All right, motion to approve the minutes with those 2 corrections.
So moved.
Second.
I'll second.
All right, motion by trustee Stokebrand, seconded by trustee Kudo. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 7-0. 5D, trustee Stokebrand.
I was just wondering if, I know there's an estimate in here with no, not to exceed, and, this seems to be, the vendor wants, I hesitate to give carte blanche here. Sometimes you can do a 5 or a 10% contingency. Can we not cap this and not to exceed 55,000, or I'm nervous about just saying no amount, an estimate.
This situation also occurred with regards to the scanning in of the minutes and the ordinances for the village. We provided estimates or our best guess on what type of documents are located and the number of each. The scanning per document, the cost of that is based upon size. So until we actually get through the documents, we won't have an accurate count of the sizes we have, and then therefore the cost of it. So it is truly just an estimate for purposes of solidifying the RFP and a vendor. Within the ARPA funding category, you'll notice that there's an allocation of up to 75,000 because we're trying to be overly cautious based upon the number of, things that we have. Planning and Development did try to provide numbers within the scope of the proposal that would provide an apples to apples comparison for the vendors that were reviewed. From what they provided and what they know so far, that quote of 48,000 is what was generated, but it's to be representative of the estimates provided and not final cost.
And so in the first part of this project, you said that we got a similar estimate. Is that part done, and do we know how close they came?
The first estimate was for our minute books and our ordinances, of which we had someone actually going through to eliminate duplication of. So we had someone touching every piece. So we had a greater level of certainty, and we came on just about close to budget.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, is there a motion to consider the agreement?
So moved, or I can read it if I need to. Do I need to read the whole thing? Yeah.
Sure.
All right, let me do that. I can read it. Hold on, let me just pull it up. Thought I had it. Okay. I move to approve Avalon the agreement, or I move to approve the agreement with Avalon in the estimated amount of $48,800 for phase 2 of document scanning.
Second.
All right, motion to approve by trustee Moore Baldoff, seconded by trustee Ursink. Any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, motion carries. Final item removed is 5D. Yes?
Oh, we just did that.
Oh, so we're done with the consent. Thank you. Apologies. Moving on, item 7, public hearings. We have none this evening. Item 8, citizens to be heard. This item is for matters not on the agenda. Are there any citizens to be heard this evening? If so, you can raise your hand or come off mute. All right, seeing none, we will move on to new business. 9A, consider July 3rd transportation and parking request program submission regarding East Capitol Drive modifications. This comes to us from the Public Works Committee with some recommendations, but not conclusive. We have Director Griepentrag on the call, and as well as Trustee Ursink, and Director Bushlick is not here, right? Correct. All right, Trustee Ursink, would you like to tell us what tee us up for what came out of committee?
Yeah, I'm gonna be honest. It's been a while. I'm blanking on this piece of this item here. So if somebody else is a little bit more in tune with it, please. If Bart, if you want to speak to it, it'd be great.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So earlier today, Village Manager Ewald and Director Butchlick and I just reconvened on this item so I could give a brief overview of where we're at. So just for everyone's reference, the village received a request on July 3rd for 13 items of transportation improvements related to Capitol Drive. That item was first vetted by Public Works, and things that they could do without needing further budget or permission they did, such as trimming trees, which was one of the items of the 13. The remainder of those were discussed at the Public Works Committee meeting on August 7th. Because Capitol Drive is a state highway, there were various items that are not under village control. The state DOT has purview over many of the requested items. And so they were discussed in two general categories. The first category of which the village does have a level of control over whether or not it can install signs and pavement markings. And so that was discussed at the August 7th Public Works Committee, and there was a general consensus to move forward with those items, but there was no formal recommendation. The second part of the request dealt with things that would require state DOT approval. And in order to submit a request for approval, you have to have an engineering study. So there were various items of a larger scope that the DOT needed an engineering study performed to verify whether or not it would impact the multimodal nature of the street. So there's two classifications and there's two recommended motions within your packet. The first one is to proceed with the items of more local control. Specifically, that deals with pavement markings, pedestrian crossing signage, and rectangular rapid flashing beacon. Once again, we have purview over those items. It would just be a matter of finding the cost or the budget to pay for those. There was general consensus received from Public Works Committee, but not a formal recommendation. And then secondarily were the larger items, which would require an engineering study that was estimated to cost approximately $50,000 and would take 8 weeks to perform. After that, we would still need a 6 to 8 week DOT review period as well. So those larger items, if the board chose to move forward with any of those, would take more time and budget to do that. There was no general consensus received on those items, and so that's pretty much where we're at right now.
And then there's a third, the pedestrian flag, creating a program is within local control. However, we have no policy in place or implementation plan, and there is a budgetary, a $1,200 startup that's estimated.
Yeah, there was a desire to work with the school board on, or the school with that item, and so there would need to be more behind the scenes work before we'd have any sort of approval with that one. Thanks for pointing that out.
All right. Well, I think for ease of process and clarity, I would take a motion on the items that fall within local control, and it seems like the costs associated with those can be covered with ARPA funding. So if there is a motion to support those items, I would entertain it at this time.
I can make a motion.
Okay.
I move that pedestrian crossing school zone pavement markings be incorporated into the 2024 Capitol Drive pavement marking program, and that pedestrian crossing signage and Newhall intersection RRFB upgrades be installed and funded with ARPA funds.
I'll second.
Second.
All right, motion by trustee Moore Baldoff, seconded by trustee Kudo. Any further discussion? Trustee Stokbrand? You're muted.
Just to be clear then, the only thing that would happen imminently is, depending on if the signs are available, is we would get additional pedestrian crossing zones, which is the international person with a school bag, right? A yellow sign with a black image. We could get that, and we could get the RFB on both sides. We get 2 more RFBs, is that correct? We get one for the middle, for the median? Because we already have, at Newell, we have one by the curbs on each side, right? But we'd also get an RFB for the median too, is that correct?
Correct. So if this motion were to be approved, those 2 items could proceed within current capacity.
Okay, and when we're talking pavement markings, 2024 Capital Drive pavement marking program, what are we looking at for that for timing? Like,
I would defer to Director Butchlick, but
like
I do know it's next
the
year.
school year is over?
Correct. I don't know if it's a spring, summer, or fall item, but it would, yes, after winter, correct, is my understanding.
So the item on the motion on the floor is to support these items.
And I guess my other question was, there were, this is the epoxy. I mean, Trustee Lynn and I had talked about this before. It sounds like this has not been something that worked out for us in terms of effectiveness. And so I would just hope that the pavement markings, we wouldn't go down the same road and get the same product that didn't work. Right?
Noted. Mhm. I see a hand up, Vashi Lozier. Are there any other comments from trustees? Okay. Vashi, would you like to speak and say your name and address, please?
Yes, Vashti Lozier, 2535 East Lake Bluff Boulevard. And I just wanted to clarify that with the rapid flashing beacon, it's in the median right now. The 2 that would be added are actually at the curbs.
Oh,
thank you.
Thank you. That's what I thought.
So that's it. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, hearing no further discussion, let's take a vote. All those in favor, let's do a show of hands or voice. All those in favors of the motion as presented, say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
I see all
Aye.
hands. All right, any opposed? Motion carries 7-0. So moving on to the second bucket, which is the items that require an engineering study to be presented to Wisconsin Department of Transportation. I'd like to open it for discussion, and if the will of the body is to move forward with an engineering study, then such a motion can be made.
I'm happy to chime in a couple of things from the discussion last month. So basically, all these items were items that we realized would need DOT approval, and as a result, an engineering study before we even send it over to DOT for them to even look at it. So we looked at this and said, all right, there's all these different ideas. We generally like all the ideas. How do we implement them? And this is really the only pathway forward for these remaining items. There was some discussion about what some of our more preferred ideas were. For the most part, as far as my recollection is, the highest priority thing that seemed to be what people were thinking of was speed limit reduction. It's 30 miles an hour there. Why not make it 25 miles per hour? There are numerous studies on the safety difference between being struck by a car going 25 versus even 30 miles an hour, that 5 miles an hour starts to become like an exponential growth in terms of harm that can be caused by excessive speed. So for the most part, unless I'm misremembering, I don't remember anybody being opposed to that. I thought that seemed like the biggest thing that we wanted to look into with DOT. And then it just kind of goes down the line with the items that are listed there. But one piece of this discussion was that it might be worth the board to spend just a little bit of time and kind of really fine tune what we would be asking from a study, because the narrower the scope and the less that we ask them to look at, the lower that cost is going to be. And so we can kind of save a little bit of money up front if we're more specific about what we ask for on the study, and then we can go straight to DOT with the results. And then one last little piece regarding the pedestrian flags. So this was something that years ago I had actually brought to the Pedestrian Bike Safety Committee. We looked at it, researched it over a couple of months, and just realized that that type of program specifically really only works with community involvement if it comes up from the community organically. If there are people in the community who are repairing the little flags, replacing the little flags, things like that. If a city just sticks some flags out there, kids generally tend to take them, play with them, not return them, and like nothing, it provides no benefit. So it needs to be something that kind of people are involved in. It really can't be a top-down type of program. So that's why that was kind of pulled from something that we would just pay for and do. So, but just to circle back, I think the discussion here should try to kind of focus on what we would want to ask of an engineering study if we even want to go down that road.
Well, thank you very much. That's really helpful. It's a helpful recap. So one option would be to direct this back to the Public Works Committee to revisit this item when you have more time. And so we wouldn't need to discuss it further this evening.
It's definitely an option.
That could be an option, but if we might be able to come to an agreement. There's really only a couple of things. There's really only three main things to discuss on there. It's the speed limit reduction, or I'm sorry, 4 things rather. The elimination of crosswalks, which is much more difficult than it seems like initially. The addition of some type of median barrier, and Trustee Stokebrand has pointed out in the past that there is a median barrier, a small little short fence on Capitol Drive in the median, just in Milwaukee, in front of like the Walmart over there. To me, that seems like an easy thing to study. If we could look at it over there and say, could we do that here? The state has already clearly approved it in one place. And then the other thing was bump outs, and with the knowledge, and this kind of goes in line with removing crosswalks, with the knowledge that we're not going to replace this street anytime soon. It would have to be a temporary bump out with bollards. So just to close my comments and leave my 2 cents, the 2 things, or the 3 things that I think are the most important in terms of priority, if we were going to ask for a study, would be number 1, speed limit reduction. I would personally like to see that examined and requested from the state. Number 2, just a simple small median barrier to prevent crossing in the middle of the road. And then number 3, the opportunity to do a temporary bump out and curb extension on some of the more difficult corners.
So I'm hearing that you would be in support of a scope of work that would include those 3 items.
Yes.
Is that something you would like to make a motion about?
Well, I think a little bit of discussion would go a long way.
Okay. Trustee Stokebrand, and is that who has their hand up? Okay.
Yeah, thank you. I would like to see the engineering study. I mean, I got to admit, I didn't have a chance to listen to the recording of your meeting, your public safety meeting. I'm sorry, Public Works. But I find it amazing that we're so afraid the state is going to say no to something when we all know, you know, on Lake Drive, they have put bollards in the city of Milwaukee, right by the Hefter Center. And they have changed the speed limit in Whitefish Bay. So I think go for the study, and we should look at the speed reduction, as Trustee Lynn has indicated. I think we should ask for removing the crosswalks. Help me understand why we have hired 2 consultants who said remove crosswalks. I mean, would they really have done that if it was impossible with any state Department of Transportation? I mean, like, what kind of people are we hiring for our studies, right? I mean, the 2017 Safe Zone study talked about removing crosswalks, and surely they knew it was a state highway. And the Parking and Transportation study recommended removing crosswalks. So to be afraid that the State Department of Transportation is going to tell us no, I would just be like, well, we hired consultants who said we should do this. You know, I think they need to work with us on this. I think, do we need any approval to do another rectangular rapid flashing beacons? I think we should have those at Bartlett, and we should also have them if we're going to keep, so if we remove them at Larkin, we don't need them. But if we can't remove the crosswalks at Larkin, then I would want an RRFB there too. The whole complement, right? Middle, sides. If we need to ask them for the engineering study, I think we should look at, again, as Trustee Lynn said, the median barriers and the bollards. If we're going in for an engineering study, why would we go halfway at this point? And the other thing I would like to make sure is that we have the money in place. So if they say, yes, you can remove those crosswalks, I would like to see that we have the money in place in the budget, whether we're using AARP or if we're using the Monsanto money from that, the Monsanto settlement, that we have the money to remove those crosswalks as indicated by state law. So if they say you have to get rid of the ramps, you have to rebuild your curb and gutter, and you've got to plant grass. Okay, let's make sure we've got the money and just get it done. Thank you.
Noted.
I
Okay,
just have a
trustee-
quick
Mhm.
clarification on a couple things, you know, with regards to the 2017 pedestrian safety. I was there when it was written, and the removal of crosswalks was looked at as something like, there's a lot of crosswalks, might be nice to have fewer, you know, lead people to fewer crossings. That's just more of an in general thought that was part of our discussion at that time. Second thing, Leanne did reach out to DOT already. They indicated removal of crosswalks was the least likely thing they would be to confirm. Second, it is, as you were mentioning there, a massive project. It requires resurfacing those areas. It requires removing the ramps, the handicap ramps, which requires curb replacement, demolishing and then replacing. That's definitely the one issue that is not everybody's in total agreement on. It does give pedestrians fewer places to cross. It is a reduction in pedestrian opportunities to cross that street. When pedestrians are the problem, it's the cars that are the problem. So that's the most complicated one. And so that's why, just from my perspective, I would focus on the other 3, because that one there's just way more pieces to that that make that much more complicated, unfortunately.
Thanks for that clarification. Other trustees?
I would support Trustee Lynn. And certainly going after those 3 if possible. But would also support Trustee Stokebrand's position of trying to do more if we can. So I'm all in on making Capitol Drive and other streets as safe as humanly possible.
Thank you. Trustee Ursing?
I'm just wondering, costs associated with this study. Do we have any ballpark figures? I thought we had talked about it at one point. Was it 25,000?
50,000 was in the
50,000
estimate.
Yeah, $50,000 just for the study, and then the implementation will be on top of that. So, and then I guess my question I guess I'm confused here. Why would removing crosswalks be a good idea when we have so much traffic, pedestrian traffic on Capitol?
If I may, we're just keep in mind that we're responding to an application that was put forward. So that was
Yeah,
just.
I was just curious, but okay.
Mhm.
I-
Trustee
The,
Lynn,
the,
you
the
have
short answer in general is just to funnel people into smaller areas to reduce the possibility that people are scattered around.
Got it.
Thank you. I didn't mean to discourage you, Trustee Ursink. I was just trying to clarify that I'm not sure that was any data or research considered by the Public Works Committee?
On crosswalks, nothing new, just the things that Trustee Stokbrand had mentioned, and that Director Bushlick mentioned by where she did reach out to DOT about that too. So.
Okay, thank you. Trustee Arndorfer?
Yeah, just a clarifying question. I don't think it's out of scope, but let me know if it is. Just for my understanding of what we look into. Does the village control the cadence of traffic signals, or i.e. walk signs? Or is that something that's outside of our control?
I believe on Capitol Drive, the DOT controls the traffic signals.
Okay, all right. I'm just mentioning that because that's something that came up in a conversation with some members of the police department as a possible, as something to consider. So you're just noting the intervals that they see on Silver Spring, for instance, where the walk sign is triggered earlier. But thank you for that clarification.
All right. Vashti?
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to respond to Trustee Ursink on the removing of crosswalks and the reason that I was one of the 3 people who submitted this request for improvements on Capitol Drive for pedestrians. And it has to do with drivers, and if there are multiple crosswalks and there's so many as you go down Capitol Drive, it's very hard for drivers to attend to all of those crosswalks and notice the pedestrians at all of them. I think it's sensory overload, and it actually, is safer if there's 2 or 3 that are well marked instead of there's one, and then 5 yards later there's another one. That's where it starts getting complicated. So that's the reason for considering reducing those. And thanks to all of you for looking at this so seriously and being committed to making this a safer roadway. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Vashti.
So Trustee Ursink, does that answer your question in terms
Yes.
of what so that's a summary of the discussion and the logic, and then Trustee Stokbrand reported on, referenced other times when that's been raised as a solution, as an alternative. At this time, is there anyone who would like to make a motion? Trustee Stokbrand?
I move that an engineering evaluation be conducted in support of item 6, speed limit reduction, 8/9, crosswalk elimination, 12, median barriers, and/or 13, temporary bump outs / curb extensions with utilization of ARPA funds and possibly using Monsanto settlement money if necessary.
I'll second that motion.
All right, motion by Trustee Stokbrand, seconded by Trustee Kudo.
I just want to clarify, when we say temporary bump outs and curb extensions, Bart, does that include the bollards that we see on Lake Drive by the Hefter Center?
Yes.
Okay.
Installations like that, correct.
Thank you. I mean, honestly, you got it. How hard is it to take out a curb? We move concrete here all the time. Taking out a curb and putting in a new curb and taking out a ramp. I can't believe that's, getting the State Department approval is the big deal. I think we can find the money to remove 6 curbs.
Noted. I have a question with including the language of the Monsanto settlement. Manager Ewald, is that something that we can do in that I'm not clear if we have an amount that's related to that.
A specific amount wasn't specified, or how much to be used was not specified. You know, one of the things that I would just share with the board with regards to the motion is that we haven't gone through the budgeting process yet. If you'd like to make the motion in advance of that process, you're welcome to do so. I know that we're going to be back at the table evaluating different items within the scope of the budget, particularly from capital items. So, you know, one of the things that you could do is wait to go through that process, but I hear the urgency and many parts and the members of the board who perhaps want to allocate these funds now. So it's really up to your discretion, and we'll be there to follow through in either circumstance, but there will need to be decisions made with regards to the capital budget too. So this will eat up utilizing ARPA, and the Montecito will make your decisions more concise when it comes to the capital budget.
Yeah, I think that's my concern, that the engineering study is fine, but I don't want to, outside of budget, I'm not comfortable committing funds on implementation at this time.
I think that's reasonable. I'm happy to proceed with the motion to do the study at this point. You know, I think the general consensus is that we generally want to know how to make this street safer, and this is really the only way. Whether we implement things right away or whether we fit that into the budget at a more appropriate time, I'm okay with, but at least obtaining the knowledge now, I'd be in favor of that.
Trustee Ursink?
Yeah, I think, you know, we're making a fairly large commitment already with our ARPA funds, and, you know, looking into the future with DPW projects. We've got, our plate is so full coming up in the next like 3 to 5 years. Not saying that this isn't a priority, because this pedestrian safety is obviously a priority for everybody here on the board, but I would like to take a look at the bigger picture. And I hate to do these studies and not follow up on the study. You know, $50,000 in the grand scheme of things isn't a lot of money, but I think we owe it to the residents to really do our due diligence on this and look at the bigger picture, look at the bigger budget, because we have some very big ticket items coming up, and they're all extremely important to this community. You know, whether it be street lighting, you know, which was a big project that Trustee Stokebrand really wanted to get through, and now we're working on that. Whether it's DPW, whether it's Oakland Avenue, I mean, we have so many big projects around the corner, and it'd be great to sit down and take a look at the whole budget, put that all in perspective, and know where and when we can move forward with this. So I'm going to vote no, unfortunately, tonight, until we are able to see, you know, our budget and where we can work this into the budget.
Yeah, I do think that the changes that are going to be made that are within our control, and then the 3 that were emphasized out of committee with the engineering study that would require approval, I think those will make a big impact. All right, any further discussion? If not, final comment, Trustee Stokebrand? You're muted.
Can't wait to meet in person again. I would like to just point out that I did say, you know, if necessary. I just think that one of the worst things that would happen would be we get the approval from WSDOT, say by the end of November, and then even sooner we can't, you know, we don't have the money, right? Whereas if we use the money we have sitting here right now, which our village got because of a threat to public safety, I mean, I honestly can't think of a better use for that money than to work on pedestrian safety in a village where walkability is so important. And it does, my motion does say, if necessary. So it would only be if we exhausted the ARPA funds, would we go to the Monsanto money? So, thank you.
I think, okay, well, I think we're ready for a vote. So, all those in favor,
Wait,
oh, yes, trustee
Right,
Moore.
would it be possible to just read the motion back, please?
Thank you. Please do read them.
Trustee Stokebrand moved that an engineering evaluation be conducted in support of items 6, speed limit reductions, crosswalk eliminations, median barriers, and/or temporary bump out curb extensions with the utilization of ARPA funds and possibly using a portion of the Monsanto settlement money if necessary. And it was seconded by trustee Kudo.
So, yeah, to clarify, you're saying so the motion means use the ARPA funds for the engineering study. And if the engineering study costs more than the available ARPA funds, to use Monsanto funds. Is that the motion? So this is all about engineering and not about implementation?
At this point, correct. And I also have a question. May I ask, Bart, the proposal you're working on for transportation aids, would any of that possibly apply if we came to be able to, if we got approval to put in the barriers on the medians? Is the project you're working on, could that be used for this?
Are you referring to the grant through the county that we applied for?
Yes.
My understanding is not, because we applied specifically for certain areas, and that was Murray, Kensington, Morris, and Menlo. So capital was not named. So I would suggest not, and those were all identified as specific temporary installations of speed humps, traffic circles, and I'm blanking on something else, but it was specific to areas and types of projects. So I would say no.
Yeah, I'm really torn because I'm not against the engineering study, and all those items seem reasonable and good to pursue. It's just that the eliminating crosswalks with the expectation that it would be done, that if it got approval, then it would be done outside of a street replacement is unprecedented, that type of construction. And so that's the part that I am concerned about voting to support. But if I vote no, it makes it sound like I'm not in favor of looking at anything, which is not the case at all. So with that,
My understanding is that we would have to vote on any project as it comes up anyways. So from my position right now in this moment, I'm okay supporting the study because, as has been mentioned, I'd like to know. And then even if DOT approves it, we still then have to look at fitting in each individual. That's how I'm looking at that. Correct me if I'm wrong on that, but
that is the process that would be yeah, this would all come back to us. Okay, thank you for that. That's helps me clarify it in my mind. All right, so then let's take a vote on this. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed?
No.
Any abstentions? Okay, so we have a 6-1 vote. All right, thank you. We have item to consider resolution 2023-15, resolution joining the Wisconsin Local Government Climate Coalition. This comes to us from a proposed agenda item from trustee Moore Baldoff. Thank you for bringing that to our attention. There is a motion. It's pretty straightforward. So I'll open it up for discussion or for a motion at this time. Or questions. Trustee Kudo.
I'm happy to make a motion.
Thank you.
I move to approve resolution 2023-15, resolution joining the Wisconsin Local Government Climate Coalition.
Second.
All right, motion by trustee Kudo, seconded by trustee Ursink. Any discussion? Hearing, oh, yeah.
Yeah, just one thing. I am going to, I don't know what the correct way to do it, if it's recuse or abstain.
Recuse.
Okay, so I'll recuse because I have done paid work for this organization before and I'm likely to again. But I support it. It's great. I'm glad we hopefully going to do this.
Well, thank you for bringing it to our attention. Trustee Sokrian.
I'm just curious, the meeting commitment, how often does this group meet? I know we're going to try to send staff if we can, and if we can't, we'll send someone from conservation. And so is it like a monthly meeting?
It's monthly.
Is it in Madison or I
It's
suppose
virtual.
It's virtual.
All right, if there's no further discussion, this will be a roll call vote.
Trustee Stokbrand,
Aye.
President McCaig,
Aye.
Trustee Arndorfer,
Aye.
Trustee Kudo,
Aye.
Trustee Ursink,
Aye.
Trustee Lynn,
Aye.
and one recusal. So motion carried 6 and 1 recused.
Thank you very much. Item 10, reports of village officials, village president. We have a proclamation for Shorewood Little League. And I'm not going to let Trustee Ursink read it. Is that okay? I'm excited to read it.
I wrote it.
Okay, you can read it.
I wrote a lot of it, but you can read it, please. Your name's attached to it, so you definitely can go ahead and read it.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Proclamation recognizing Shorewood Little League. Whereas the Shorewood Little League Majors All-Stars compiled a 5-1 record in the Little League State Tournament, defeating Burlington 2-1 on July 28th to win the state championship. And whereas this win is the first ever state championship for Shorewood Little League, and whereas Shorewood Little League will represent Wisconsin in the Little League World Series Midwestern Regional Tournament. Whereas the Village of Shorewood commends the following players for their teamwork, grit, and determination. Aaron Klebon, Alex Duros, Avi Santambrosio, Ben Tauchis, Evan Duros, Hans Schmidt, Levi Kolb, Mason Burkle, Oliver Peltz, Owen Dupuy, Ty Clark, Wesley Strobush, and William Kowalski. And whereas the Village of Shorewood commends the following volunteer coaches for dedicating their time and energy to fostering youth development and community through the game of baseball. Coach Tommy Volman, Dimitri Duros, Tim Burkle, and Jonathan Kowalski. And whereas the Village of Shorewood acknowledges Shorewood Little League and its volunteer coaches for helping to develop the qualities of citizenship, teamwork, resilience, and physical well-being while providing a safe, fun, wholesome combination of recreation and competition for the youth of Shorewood. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Village recognizes Shorewood Little League September 5th, 2023.
Thank you.
Thanks for letting me read that.
Yeah, good work, everyone. This is a really exciting summer. The next item I have is the North Shore Fire Department board meeting. They introduced the budget in August. They came in with a 3.5% anticipated raise. The board told them to that we would go back to our boards and to come up with options because we did not think that that was sustainable. So I anticipate more discussion in September with potential, and that'll come back to us as well because we all approve the budget. The link is there for more information, and I cannot think of any other updates at this point. I'll pass it over to trustees. Oh, actually, there was in municipality, I think we have an article in there. I haven't seen my copy yet. Village trustees? Trustee Stokbrand?
Sorry,
Muted?
I was reading about the potential, there may be some conflict with the first floor remodel. And so I would just like to make a motion to ask staff that if the construction issues are such that we can't be in the courtroom by the October 12th meeting, if we could meet somewhere else in person.
I was just gonna suggest that we meet in the committee room because it has the video recording requirements that we need in order to video the meeting. So that's initially when I put out communication, I said, you know, if the boardroom's unavailable, we'll go back in person in the committee room. So that was what I was anticipating.
I guess my concern is that it's so tight if people want to attend. And can we do it in the village center?
We could see if the village center is available. I don't know how the quality of the recording will be in there. They've had some challenges with microphones and being able to hear what's on that recording, which is one of the reasons why we were staying away from that room. Just the acoustics are not as conducive.
I don't know. I thought we spent all this COVID money on equipment, and now to hear that we don't have the right equipment, it's just
It's a different setup. It's a different setup.
I
We're set up
understand
for.
that, but we spend a lot of money on audio visual.
Could you please limit your discussion, please? We've noted the item, and I'm going to ask for village manager to pursue that and communicate to the board. So thank you. That
Happy to.
concern is noted. Trustee Ursing?
I just want to remind everybody that the Shorewood Feast is this Saturday, and it's always an exciting event. I know we are looking for volunteers. If you haven't already made plans yet and you're looking for a great experience, volunteering is the way to go to help, especially helping with the dinner that evening. Serving your fellow neighbors and other residents and community members is such a great time. And I make sure that the chefs create at least an extra 25 meals for whoever volunteers. I think right now we have maybe 10 people volunteering to help serve. So if you're free that evening, it's going to be a world-class event with amazing food and amazing people and a lot of really familiar faces from the community. So it's going to be a great time. Hope to see everybody there.
I tried to sign up and the sign up genius like froze up. So I will email Janet. So you have 11 volunteers.
Thank you. That's great.
It's a lot of fun. Other trustee reports? Trustee Lynn?
Real quick, first day of school today. So looking forward to our kids kicking off a great school year this year.
Awesome. All right, village manager.
Included within your packet is the initiatives and work plan Q2 update. So we show many of the initiatives, some that have been completed, multiple ones that are in progress, many which have been ongoing now for a couple of months, but we're looking forward to concluding. We have the snapshot of how it looks from the quarter page perspective of allocation by department, just as a refresher, so everyone can see what's actually allocated in the work plans for Q2 for this year. If you can believe it, we're going to be recalibrating to start laying out the templates for 2024, because as we kind of round out the budget process, that solidifies where our priorities are and how most of the big movers in our work will be accomplished if they are funded. So at this time, I'm happy to answer any questions that the group may have.
Trustee Stokbrand?
I was just curious, I thought university program, we have the communication management and education on historic preservation, but I didn't see anything on the electrification of the police department squads.
I noticed that too, actually, the night before the meeting when I was looking through it. I don't know if Chris just forgot to insert that one where we've started work on that. So,
because I think we paid for the three topics.
Oh, we did. We've started work.
And the other question I had was the RFP for Vision 2035 plan development for the DPW, I thought that would probably be planning and development.
So the Vision 3035 is actually the village's strategic plan. And so that is an RFP that's going to be coming to strategic initiatives and then the board for consideration. And I'll be preparing that for you.
Okay, because it's under department, it says DPW.
Do you have a page number, Kathy?
Maybe that would be helpful. Maybe I'm looking at the right spot.
83 of the packet. So the RFP for the Vision 2035, the department is Public Works, which I don't think is accurate. That's all.
Thank you.
I must not be looking in the correct location. I don't.
It's on the page that has the big arrow in the
Oh,
presentation.
I apologize. I was looking at the Q2 department work.
Yeah, no,
plans.
just the little like sheet. And it's like 3/4 of the way down.
Correct. That should be village manager's office.
Okay, thank you. All right, future items of consideration. I don't have an official item to consider, but just to make a note, it occurred to me when I was reviewing the volunteer applications. We have a question that says equity and diversity experience or diversity experience, and it's either a yes or a no. And so to make a note in our EDI strategic plan of what materials we would provide to someone if they said no, or how we would find out more about their experience and make it part of our orientation or onboarding. Any other future items? Okay, that's a cute cat in the background, Trustee Ursink. Do it, cat? Or a dog? Somebody. Oh, dog. All right, motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All right, second?
Second.
All right, no objections. We are adjourned at 9:05 with a Trustee Stokebrand, seconded by Trustee Lynn. All right, good night, everyone.
Thank you.
Night.